I know this video is probably gonna offend some people. Hi friends, welcome back to Anna with Plants. My name is Anastasia. Thank you so much for tuning into another video. Welcome to the video nobody asked for, but I'm giving it to you anyway. I should really be doing a video that's actually been requested, like more Hoya videos or a video on my plant care routine, but like this is just, I cannot in good conscience make a plant care routine video without making this video first. This is just how my brain works. So a little bit of background on my growing journey. I've been growing in semi-hydro for about 2 years now. My big disclaimer is I am no means, I have no business and I would never call myself an expert because I am not an expert in really anything other than maybe what I got my degrees for. But when it comes to plant care and plants in general, I'm an expert of nothing. So please don't look at this video as me giving expert knowledge or advice. Look at this video as maybe just a culmination of everything that I have learned over the last 2 years of growing in semi-hydro. That's really what this is. If this video convinces at least one person to try it out, I feel like my job is done, quite frankly. This is just like such a huge passion project of mine, is to turn more people onto this growing method, because I've gotten this in the past of, oh, how do you grow that plant? That's a hard plant to grow. And it's not because I have this magical green thumb up my ass. It's literally just because of semi-hydro. So it has nothing to do with me. It's just the method that I've chosen to grow it in. It just makes life so much easier. So this video isn't really targeted towards people that are already using this growing method or have tried it and found it's not for them. Like, I'm specifically trying to talk to the people that have always been interested in semi-hydro but just haven't tried it out for various reasons, mainly because they think it's too complicated. Because I promise you, the one thing that I promise you is it can be a lot of information in the beginning, but to like its core basics, semi-hydro is not as complicated as what people make it seem out to be. I'm just gonna throw at you the utmost basics of semi-hydro, and I'm gonna tell you where and when you can take shortcuts to more or less give the same results. So in my point, there are some negotiables and some non-negotiables when it comes to growing in semi-hydro. I know this video is probably gonna offend some people. I am sorry in advance if you're personally offended if I say one thing that you hold as your gold standard can be cut out. Instead of coming for me in the comments, maybe look at it as that this is one of the beauties of semi-hydro, that there's so many ways to grow in it and to do well in it. Again, this is just my growing experience. This is just what I've seen, my journey in semi-hydro. So just take it with, like, take everything in life with a grain of salt. But take this with a grain of salt and just know, like, this is just my opinion and that there are many other ways to grow in this method. What other disclaimers do I want to get out of the way? Because this is like a huge ass disclaimer. I think people just take their plant care routine very personally. So when they see someone else saying, oh, I don't do this, I think the knee-jerk reaction is to be all like, oh, well, you're wrong, you don't know what you're talking about. And to that, I would say you're correct. I don't know what I'm doing, but I mean, who really knows what they're doing, guys? Like, if someone in your life comes up to you and tells you that they know exactly what they're doing, please take that as a red flag, okay? This is just unsolicited life advice here. If someone tells you in your life that they know exactly what they're doing, run. That means like shit's about to go down and you don't need that in your life, okay? Okay, sit back, relax, have a drink. I'm gonna try to go through it as fast as possible, but you guys, I have, like, this is the most I've ever come prepared to a video. Like, I am ready to go. We're gonna go over just basically the basics of it, and then at the end I'm going to give you a pros and cons of maybe why you should try out this method and maybe why you shouldn't, and then I will leave the choice up to you, dear viewer, on what you want to do. Like, let's just get into it. I want to start off this video by defining what semihydroponics is. Again, if you see me glancing down, it's because I'm glancing down at my notes. It's a method of growing plants in an inorganic, inert medium. So inorganic meaning that it's soilless, and inert inert, meaning it's non-reactive or there are no chemical reactions happening in the medium or the substrate. The other component of semihydro is you're using a capillary or a wicking action to transport nutrients from a water or reservoir to the plant itself. So basically you have these three components. You're gonna have the medium, which is traditionally inorganic and inert. You're gonna have the water reservoir, which is typically your nutrient solution. And these two are combined by a capillary action, which is basically just you're moving the water upwards towards the plant itself. Those are kind of like the three main components of what define what semihydroponic is. I'm gonna say a sentence right now that's really might confuse some people, but we're gonna come back and clarify it later in this video. Semihydroponic systems are all self-watering systems, but not all self-watering systems need to be hydroponic. It's a little confusing. We'll come back to it. I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the three most common setups when you are talking about semi-hydroponic systems. First one, and I'm gonna paste my very amateur Canva drawing that I made, so please don't come for me. These are the three most common that I've seen. By all no means is it all inclusive. The first one I'm gonna talk about is no drainage. So this is basically a system where you have a vessel and that container contains no drainage holes in it, and the water is at the bottom of there, and usually what you see is people will use clay pebbles or leca to then keep the water at the bottom, but then the medium is above that layer. It's like an all-in-one closed kind of system. See, I don't grow in no drainage. I'm just personally not comfortable doing that. I do use this for basically stumps, anthurium stumps. This is my Pap X from Cartel Dome. So I put some leca down here at the bottom, and you can't really see it too much because of all the algae, but there is leca down here at the bottom. And then I put the tree fern, which is the medium, up on top of it. And then the plant is in here. Through capillary action, the plant is gonna uptake these nutrients in the water down here. This is your no drainage semi-hydroponic system. The next method that you'll commonly see is a cash pot kind of, and when I mean cash pot, it's just basically like a cover pot that holds the planter or the pot that you're using. For this example, I'm gonna pull out my Tenanthe Burl Marxii. This I use as a cash pot. So this cash pot has no drainage. This cash pot or cover pot is to hold the water in the bottom, and your plant, which is in a normal planter with drainage holes at the bottom, then will sit inside this cover pot where the water is. You wanna add, again, some kind of clay pebble, rock, some leca down at the bottom, so your roots aren't directly touching the water. You're gonna decrease your chances of root rot that way. The roots are gonna grow downwards towards the water source here, and they're going to wick up the nutrient. There's no space between the actual pot that the plant is in and your cover pot here. So the next system is the one that I personally like to use the most, and that is the cash pot, but with a cord in between. It's called a wicking cord or a cotton cord, basically whatever kind of material you want to use that in between the cash pot and the cover pot that's going to transport the nutrient water up into the substrate. For this example, I have my PAP here, just a general imported unknown ID PAP, and a lot of these self-watering pots that you find on Amazon are going to be a great example of that. So you have your cover pot here, no drainage, it's going to hold the water here. You have your wicking cord here that is going to be in contact with the substrate and the water. You have your pot with drainage holes. This is what I mean when I talk about the cash pot plus the wicking cord. I have rotted a lot less plants using this compared to just a cash pot and a cover pot. With cash pot and cover pots, you have to be really careful how much water you add to it, because if you add too much, and this is also for the no drainage as well, if you add too much water in the first two systems, you're gonna increase your chances to rot the roots because the water may come into contact with the roots. Some is kind of a little bit more foolproof that way. Also, if you A, don't want to water as much, or B, are more so a traveler, you can fill this up pretty high and the plant can just use as needed. So remember the confusing thing that I said, that self-watering doesn't necessarily need to be semi-hydroponic. Basically, the question you might be asking yourself when you look at these three setups is, what's the difference between self-watering and semi-hydroponic? The answer to that is, what is the composition of your water reservoir? So if your water or reservoir contains just regular water, that being RO water, distilled water, tap water, that system is technically only self-watering. However, if your self-watering setup has nutrients in the water and it's a nutrient solution, then at that point your self-watering becomes a semi-hydroponic setup. I hope that makes sense, but with that settled, we're moving on to the next basic of semihydro. I'm gonna be using medium and substrate interchangeably here. So the most common ones you're gonna find for semihydro are gonna be leca or clay pebbles, and this comes in a variety of forms. Pond, so that pond can be lechuza pond, that pond can be your own DIY pond, but the core components of pond is basically like lava rock. You can find pumice in there sometimes. Zeolite is also common in there, just a variety of rock. You can also do pure pumice. So I've grown in pure pumice before and had no problems. I've also seen perlite done, although I don't recommend that exclusively, but I've seen perlite kind of combined with pond sometimes. Basically, all of these are gonna be inorganic. I'm gonna say something controversial here, and I know the traditionalists that do semihydro might get their panties in a wad. I get it, but it's just the reality, and it's just what I've seen. Is I've used organic medium in semihydro, and I know the definition I just gave and it says inorganic, but I have personally used and I have seen other people use organic medium in semihydro. I have grown soil plants in it as well, although I don't recommend that unless the specific plant you're using really loves to be very well watered, very moist all the time. Sorry for using that word. I've seen cocoa husk. So tree fern fiber is personally what I've been using. I have this mix that I've been using, which is primarily pond, but I'll put some tree fern in it. And that mix has been doing really, really well. Although I don't know if you can call it a traditional substrate for semihydro, since the tree fern is an organic compound. I'm just gonna leave that information out there. Might not be like strict hydro rules, but hey, rules are meant to be broken here. All right, next up, we're gonna be talking about water, the main component of your nutrient solution. This is where I'm gonna say you can start cutting corners and doing like the lazy person approach to semihydro, which I know it might piss off some people. The types of water that is recommended you use is RO, which is reverse osmosis, or distilled water. I myself have used distilled water for about the first year that I did this in. I bought distilled water and then I had my own like contraption that would distill the water for me. That took like hours to do. And then laziness kicked in, some depression kicked in, and then I just changed to tap water because I could not be bothered at that moment. I didn't personally notice a difference. I did not notice a discernible difference in the growth of my plants and the health of my plants. I never really looked back. I just use tap water now. That's probably controversial. It's the truth of the matter. I do use a water conditioner for it. I use the API one, and this one you just do like a drop of and it removes like chlorine, other chemicals that could be in the tap water that you're using. That's kind of like the first negotiable non-negotiable for me is the type of water that you're using in your nutrient solution. However, the first non-negotiable, again, in my opinion, is the pH of the type of water. This is kind of like one of the core things that you want to be doing. I'm gonna post up a graph, and this is not my graph. I'm gonna go ahead, link where I got that graph down below. This is nutrient availability according to pH. On the y-axis, you're gonna have all the nutrients that are in your nutrient solution generally, and then on the x-axis, you're gonna have pH levels. The general consensus is you want the pH of your nutrient solution to be between 5.5 to 6 is what I've heard the most. Recently, I've heard people going as low as 4.5. Personally, I've never tried that. In order to do that, I would have to add pH down. I have not had experience in that. You can see why people say that 5.5-ish is a good pH to go for, because pretty much all of the nutrients are gonna be bioavailable at that pH. This graph basically highlights the importance of, if you're gonna go through all that trouble to mix up your nutrient solution, then you kind of have to be checking the pH, because if your pH is off while the nutrients are in the water, your plant is not going to be able to absorb all of the nutrients that are there. Why do it in the first place? Again, just my opinion. Though pH down is also like a pretty common acid that you can add to your nutrient solution. There are other types and brands out there, but pH down is kind of the most talked about. pH, very important. Now, jumping into nutrient solution, this can be a whole video in and of itself. In this video, I'm not even going to talk about how I mix my nutrient solution. That's going to be part of a plant care coming up sometime in the future when I film it. I'm just going to go over kind of broad general basics when it comes to nutrient solutions. So the most common two that you're going to find is a 3-part system and a 1-part system. So 3-part systems, I'm going to use the most popular one out there. It's the general hydroponics system. However, other brands also have their own. It comes with 3 nutrients that you need to mix into your water. I personally have used the general hydroponics 3-part system for about like a little bit over the first year I did this, and it was great. However, it is very technical. The lazy approaches that you can take to this growing method is you can do a 1-part instead. The most popular 3 I've heard of are Foliage Pro, GT Foliage Focus, and TPS1. So I personally use TPS1. I have not tried the others that I mentioned. I can't speak on those. Honestly, one of the game changers for me is just using a 1-part system. I do think it's pretty cool how you can customize your own mix in a 3-part system. But when you're feeling lazy, when you don't feel motivated, having to mix 3 parts plus all of the additives that you do to it has deterred me so much from making a nutrient solution to water my plants that I simply just didn't even water my plants. So I think the easier approach, the more manageable approach, and the more flexible approach is to just start off with tap water in a 1-part system. And also when it comes to additives, there's so many additives to nutrient solutions out there. There's CalMag, so calcium and magnesium. There's also silica out there too. That's a common one. There's a lot of things that you can add to the 1-part or to the 3-part solutions. This is a very much a choose your own adventure kind of thing. Next, we're gonna go on to a controversial topic, which is flushing. The consensus out there is that there's no consensus when it comes to flushing. There are people that swear by flushing and say that you need to do it, because if you don't do it, you're going to cause nutrient lockout, you're going to cause nutrient imbalances, and then you're eventually going to get nutrient deficiencies because of that, because you don't flush. Other people have never flushed a goddamn day of their lives. It really just kind of depends. I did flush. I had a flushing period for maybe like 5 or 6 months in the 2 years that I've been doing this. You know, I flushed one time per month. So you can either flush by water or by FloraClean. That's just basically what you add to the water, and it'll kind of help do like a more complete flush. In my experience, I haven't really found that much of a difference between flushing and not flushing. So I don't currently flush, and I haven't really seen any plants struggle because of it, but just because that's my experience doesn't mean it's going to be other people's experience. There's not much I can say about this one topic since I personally don't do it. We have made it to the last part of this video, which is going to be the pros and cons of semihydro. The pro is you really take the guesswork out of watering. You just put water in the reservoir and in the cover pot, and that's it. Again, be mindful of how much water you place. You don't have to put your hand in the soil. You just kind of put your water in there, and then that's it. Also, because of that, you end up using less water that way, because with normal soil plants, you have to let the water flush through completely, and you might have to do that a couple times. Whereas this, you just put exactly how much you need, and that's it. In my opinion, and this is just me as a grower, I've rotted more plants in soil than I have in semihydro. I know that's not going to be the story for people watching this, but just the type of person I am, that doesn't mean that you'll never get root rot. I think it's a lot less chance. So with the nutrient solution, you can really customize what you want to focus on. If you're trying to bloom it, to grow it, all of the additives that you can add to it, how much you want to feed. So there's concentrations on, do you want to do a low, medium, high feed? So it's a lot more customizable. But having said that, I also use my nutrient solution to water my regular soil plants. I know you're not really supposed to do that. You're supposed to create a solution for soil plants and a solution for your semi-hydroponic plants that are supposed to be different. Again, lazy girl method, I just create one solution and I water all of my plants with it. All of the soil plants, all of the semi-hydroponic plants, I just use the same nutrient solution. I've never found any adverse reactions with that, so I don't know. Pro is the substrate you're buying is completely reusable, which is a good thing. You can boil the leca, you can decontaminate all of the substrate that you're using to reuse it again for other plants. That's a huge plus. Let's talk about fungus gnats. I've seen out there people saying that if you do semi-hydro, you'll never get a fungus gnat. I cannot disagree with that statement more. You'll reduce your fungus gnats, that's for sure. Especially if you're going to grow in completely in organic substrate. A word to the wise about using like organic medium for semi-hydro, that is gonna be like a fungus gnat farm right there, because it's gonna be moist all the time. The most important pro of semi-hydro is the increased flexibility in your plant care routine. I cannot stress this enough. Like, just the fact that you can choose which day that you want to water. And you can do this in soil plants, but it's like, I don't know, when soil plants need water, like they kind of need water, whereas for semi-hydro, like you can just pick a day of the week and you can do all of your plants in it, or you know, you can go by stages. Like, it's basically timed out very well. It's very adaptable in so many ways too. Like, you can choose which substrate you want to grow in. You can choose no drainage, or if you just are going to do like the cash pot, you can choose obviously what kind of nutrient solution. That's where like a lot of the differences come in. You can experiment with so many things to find out what suits you best. So I feel like when people try to grow in this method and then they just say like, oh, it's not for me. Well, did you try a couple of different ways? Maybe that was not your medium. Maybe you needed to change the setup. Maybe your nutrient solution was kind of off to begin with. Like, there's so much that you can customize in this, and I feel like it might suit a lot of people. So just saying that. My boyfriend is taking a shower, so sorry if you hear that, but we are going on to the cons. So first up con, very obvious, is the cost of the materials. To start up this growing method, it can get kind of pricey off the bat because you're buying all the pots that you need, you're buying all of the substrate, you have to buy the nutrients and all of that. So the upfront cost to start this, it will be incurred. However, once you purchase those things, they actually do last quite a while, and you can reuse the substrate, you can reuse the pots, and then the nutrients also last quite a long time too. Another thing is there's a learning curve. There's a lot of trial and error. Chances are you might have to tweak a couple things that might not work for you off the bat, and so when you're first starting this, it can seem kind of like you don't really know what you're doing, but once you kind of get into the hang of it, the learning curve is just time-based. Like the more that you grow in this method, you'll just find that it's a lot more intuitive for you over a period of time. And then the last two cons, you're gonna get substrate everywhere and you're gonna step on it and it's gonna hurt. And lastly is algae, especially if you use clear containers. I love to use clear containers. I'm kind of like a voyeur in that aspect. I love to see the roots and how they're growing. You can avoid algae if you use like really dark containers and black pots and everything. Algae does grow at the top of the surface as well. All in all, it doesn't really hurt the plant. It just kind of looks a little bit gross after a period of time. You might have to clean the container. As far as I know, there isn't really anything you can do about it minus to get darker pots to prevent it. I don't think, aside from cleaning, I've found anything that can kill the algae. This is the entirety of the video, and I just feel like I talked at you and I just like chucked a whole bunch of information at you. I had to make this video. Like, even if this video doesn't do well, I will be proud of myself. I just had to like condense all of my knowledge that I learned over the last 2 years, but also try to make it as digestible as possible. Hopefully I've accomplished that. I will also like to credit a couple of the people that have taught me a lot. I have learned over the years from a lot of different sources. The 3 people on YouTube that I've watched a lot in the beginning to kind of help me get started is Kevin from Hakunalaplanta, Minimalist Callie, and Not Dude. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.